Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we are studying Daf Mem Aleph of Masechta Shabbos. It's a cool page, not too difficult, not really too difficult, also not too long. Should be smooth sailing, I think. Anyways, quick overview of the page. So we're going to start out talking about just like a little bit of proper modesty when bathing in the river. Okay. Then we're going to talk about can you drink on Shabbos from water that was in like a hot kettle? I don't think that this is exactly an urn, like our current hot water urns, but okay, we'll get there, we'll discuss it. And then we're going to talk about something a little bit different, which is also related to hot urns, but can you put water in a hot urn on Shabbos? We're going to have a few different opinions there. That's basically our daf, so let's just jump right in. Okay, so we ended up yesterday we talked about a story at the end with Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Abo, where Rabbi Abo was like floating in a pool on Shabbos. So now we're going to mention another encounter between Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Abo, this one also involving water, involving bathing actually. V'amar Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Zera, and said Rabbi Zera, on Chaziseh Rabbi Abo, I saw Rabbi Abo, sheniach yodav kneged panav shel mata, v'yadayna yinaga ilo naga. Oh. So Rabbi Zera says that he saw that when Rabbi Abba went to bathe in the river, he was covering his penis with his hands, and he doesn't know, and Rabbi Zera is saying he doesn't know if Rabbi Abo was actually touching his penis or not. So the Gemara says, well, pshita de lo naga. So the Gemara says, well, obviously he wasn't touching. Detanya, because we learn in a brisa, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Kol ha'oches ba'ama umashtin ki ilu mevim abo la'olam. That Rabbi Eliezer says that anybody who touches his penis when he's peeing, it's as if he brings a flood to the world. How come? Because the flood was, or it says ki yishchis kol basar, right? That all flesh was being destructive, and we learn from that what that means is basar, flesh, I guess, referring to the penis, and they were saying that they would be motzi zera levatala, that they were, releasing sperm for no reason. So therefore, and therefore, Rabbi Eliezer says that anybody who touches himself when he's peeing, so there's a concern that maybe if you touch yourself, then maybe you will come to see zera, either now or maybe later, I don't know, and then being motzi zera levatala is the sin from the dor hamabu. So therefore, you should not touch yourself ever, it sounds like. And therefore, therefore we can assume that Rabbi Abba was not touching himself when he went to go bathe in the river. Okay. So Amar Abaye Asaua Kiboleshes. So Abaye says, no, actually it could be that maybe he was touching himself. Okay, how come? Ditnan, because we learn in a Mishnah in Masechta Avodah Zarah in the context of Yein Nesech, alright? Yein Nesech being wine that was used for libations by pagans. So you're not allowed to drink that wine, and then the concern is, whenever a Oved Avodah Zarah touches wine or a barrel of wine, we have to be concerned that maybe he used it for Avodah Zarah, for idol worship. So now it says Boleshes she nichnasa la'ir. So if you have soldiers that come to a city, b'shas shalom, if it's during peaceful time, well then chavios psuchos asuros. Well then, if you go to your wine cellar and you find that there are barrels of wine that are open, and you figure that's peculiar, the soldiers were around and now there's open barrels of wine. So those are not allowed, because you have to be concerned that maybe the soldiers took some of the wine and used it for idol worship. Stumos mutaros. However, any of the barrels of wine in your cellar that are closed, well then those are fine, because if they're closed, then the soldiers didn't get into them. B'shas milchama. However, if it's during wartime, well then elu ve'elu mutaros. Both the open and the closed barrels that you find in your cellar, you'd be allowed to drink. Even the open ones you're allowed to drink. Why? Because they're so busy with fighting in whatever battle they're fighting that they wouldn't have any time to do those libations for their avodah zaras. and therefore you'd be allowed to drink it. So what do we see? Right? So we see that since the soldiers are scared, they aren't going to concern themselves with doing, right? They're scared of the war, so therefore they're not going to concern themselves with, doing libations for Avodah Zarah. Although I guess maybe you think that, if they were fighting in a war, maybe that would be the right time to do all sorts of, worship practices. But I don't know, apparently they're busy with war. They're not fussing with these libations. So therefore you're allowed to drink the barrels of wine even if they are found open. Now, Hachanami here also, Kevin the bias, lo asi lehir hure. Here also, theoretically, it's possible that Rabbi Abo was even touching himself because since he is scared, we're not concerned that he's going to be thinking anything inappropriate that would lead him to be motzi zera levatala. V'hachamai biasusa, what's he scared about right now when he's going to bathe? So biasusa dinahara. He's scared of the river, meaning, I don't know if it means that he's like petrified, but the point is, he's bathing in the river. He does have to be careful. His mind is on other things. His mind is on making sure that he, gets in there, bathes, gets out. So, fine. Now, Ini, is this really true that Rabbi Abo, forget about if he was touching himself or not, is it really true that Rabbi Abo was even covering himself up, was even covering his penis at all? Why not? What's the problem with that? Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. Rabbi Abba says in the name of Rav Huna, in the name of Rav, that anybody who feels that they have to cover up their penis, so then it's like they're being kofer for their bris milah. It's they're like embarrassed of their bris milah and they don't want to, they're scared that anybody should see. So how could it be that Rabbi Abo was covering himself at all? So lo kasha, it's no problem. Haki nachis, haki salik. It depends. When he's going into the river, so then nobody's everyone's on the shore. They're not looking, at the front of his body. So therefore, there's no reason to have to cover up. And if you do cover up, then it's kilu, you're denying your bris milah. However, when you're coming out of the river, and theoretically anybody who's like on the shore could see you, so then for tznius reasons, for modesty reasons, it would be allowed to cover to cover yourself. Okay, kiha de Rava shachi, because Rava, when I guess he would go to bathe, I guess when he was going into the river and out of the river, he would like bend over so that nobody should see him. Reb Zera zakif. Whereas Reb Zera would stand up, just stand up regularly, and I guess he wasn't, and I guess anybody could see him, okay? And that way he wasn't being kofer his bris. Rabbanan tvei Rav Ashi ki kanachte zakve ki kasalke shache. The rabbis from the Beis Medrash of Rav Ashi, when they would go into the river, so they would stand up regularly because there's nobody looking at them, so there's nothing to hide. Yet when they came out of the river, since people could see them, so for modesty reasons they would bend over so that nobody would be able to see their private parts. Okay, well, I guess that's what you should do when you go into the river. Yeah, I guess it's also relevant for if you're in the mikvah and stuff like that. Okay, let's go weiter in Shas. So we have an interesting story over here. And what's particularly interesting to me about it is that we had a very similar story in Masechta Brachos on Daf Chaf Daled Amud Beis. However, one of the characters was different. Reb Zera hava kamishtamid midu Rab Yehuda to by the Mesach La'Eretz Yisrael. So Reb Zera, he was in Bavel and he wanted to make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, but he was scared of Rav Yehuda. Why was he scared of Rav Yehuda? Why was he avoiding Rav Yehuda? Dam Rav Yehuda kol ha'olam mi Bavel Eretz Yisrael over ba'aseh. Because Rav Yehuda would say, anybody who makes aliyah from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, he violates a mitzvah saseh. What's that mitzvah saseh? So it's actually a pasuk in Yirmiyah. What does it say over there? Shenemar Bavel yuvau v'shama yiyu. That you will be brought to Bavel, and that is where you will remain. So therefore Rav Yehuda was not into people making aliyah, which was also interesting. Do you remember? Because then there was, what bracha do you make on oil? And Rav Yehuda Dafka, it said he made the bracha of Baruch Shemen Artzenu, right? I believe that's what it was, right? Blessed is the oil of our land. And they said, don't listen to Rabbi Yehuda. He was a Tziyoni. He was a big lover of Eretz Yisrael. That's why he said that bracha. So it's interesting. On the one hand, he really loved Eretz Yisrael, yet on the other hand, he felt that it was not allowed to make Aliyah. Now, we saw a similar thing in Masechta Brachos, where Rabbi Abba was the one who wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael, and he was scared of Rabbi Yehuda. And actually, Janine, if I remember correctly, that was one of the early WhatsApp discussions was about this Gemara. So very cool. Anyways, in this case, in this time around, it is Rabbi Zera who was avoiding Rabbi Yehuda because he wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael. So Amar Eza ve'eshma mine milsa ve'aisi ve'esak. So Rabbi Zera figured, before I make Aliyah, let me just go. He was all packed up. He had his bags ready. He was mamish, like about to leave and head on his journey to Eretz Yisrael. And he said, you know what? Let me just go and, get one last teaching from Rav Yehuda before I go. Right? So, so sure enough, when he went to Rav Yehuda was bathing. He was in the bathhouse. And he said to his attendant there in the bathhouse, Haviu li neser, haviu li masrek. Bring me, I assume this is like referring to soap, bring me a comb. Now, Rashi points out that he said these things in Lashon HaKodesh, I guess in Hebrew, and this is going to be important in a few minutes. Pischu pumaychu v'afiku avala, which is interesting. He instructed his attendant that his attendant should open up his mouth and breathe in the steam from the bathhouse so that he will sweat. The ashtu mimaya dvebane, and also drink the water of the from the bath. Interesting advice. Okay, and that seemed to have been very, very relevant and useful, a very useful thing to witness for Rabbi Zera, for he said, Amar ilmale basi el lishma davar dayai. Wow, if I only came just to hear this dialogue, wow, it was totally worth it, because that was amazing stuff. What was so amazing about it? Bishlam aviyu neser aviyu masrek. Okay, I understand about that little dialogue when he said, can you bring me some soap? Can you bring me a comb? Kamash malan, dvarim shachol mutar la'omer b'lashon kodesh. So it's teaching us that you're allowed to say sort of, regular kind of things like bring me a comb, bring me some soap. You can even say that in Lashon HaKodesh in the bathhouse, okay? Pischu pumaychu v'afiku avala nami. Also, when Rav Yehuda instructed his attendant, open your mouth so that you can breathe in the steam and sweat. Also, it's teaching us something. Kiddush Shmuel, like Shmuel, the Amr Shmuel, havala mapik havala. That steam releases steam, i.e., breathing in the steam from the bathhouse is going to cause you to sweat. But to drink the water from the bath, what's so awesome about drinking bath water that people have been bathing in? So the Tanya, it's like a brisa. If a person eats and he doesn't drink, he only eats, no drinking, so then what he eats it's like he ate blood, or the food that he ate is blood. Why is the food that he ate blood? And this is the beginning of getting a stomach illness. Okay, well, I guess you got to drink. If you ate something and then you didn't walk afterwards, you just went straight to sleep. So well, then the food that you ate is just gonna spoil, to rot inside of you. And then you're gonna get bad breath. Yuck. Somebody needed to defecate, and instead of doing that, he just ate more. Well, it's like a oven that you lit just on top of pre-existing ash. I mean, instead of clearing out the ash, you just added more wood and just lit it like that. And then that is going to cause you to smell bad, like your body to smell bad. What happens if you bathed in hot water and you didn't drink any of the water? So domet l'tanur she'siku mi b'chutz v'lo siku mi b'fnim. It's like a oven that you lit from the outside. From outside of it, you didn't light it inside. All right. Well, probably want to light it inside. if you bathed in hot water and then you didn't you take like a cold shower immediately afterwards, well then doma the barzel shechnisu laor v'lochnisu letzonin. Well then it's similar to iron that you got red hot in the fire and then didn't put cold water on it to strengthen it. Rachaz v'losach, if you bathed and then didn't apply oil to your skin afterwards, doma l'mayim al gabi chavis, it's similar to water that's on top of a barrel and isn't going into the barrel, doesn't really do much good. I guess use oils to kind of rub in whatever good stuff that you want to get into your body. Okay, fine. Very good. Alright, we get to a new Mishnah. This new Mishnah is kind of interesting. Yeah, the way I understand it, it's referring to hatmana. It's referring to like insulating on Shabbos. I can't say with 100% certainty that I'm right. I mean, Rashi doesn't mention hatmana anywhere, which makes me a little nervous. But at the same time, he is talking about Mosif Hevel and not Mosif Hevel, and that's generally a hatmana thing. And I don't really understand how else to understand it. And it's actually Tosfos' kasha against Rashi, right? Tosfos asks the kasha against Rashi. He says like, why is Rashi talking about hatmana? Why is he talking about Mosif Hevel and not Mosif Hevel? This isn't talking about hatmana, but I feel like it is talking about hatmana. But I'll let you guys decide. Says the Mishnah, Moliar hagaruf shosen imenu b'Shabbos antike afapisha gufa ein shosen imenu. What does this mean? So a moliar seems to be like some kind of like hot water kettle that was metal, and there was there was like a place outside on the exterior of the kettle to like put hot coals, and I guess those hot coals would get the kettle really hot, and it would heat up the water inside of it. Okay. So moliar agaruf shosin imenu b'Shabbos. So if before Shabbos you remove the coals, and now this kettle remains hot, and there is hot water inside of it, well then, so it's not Mosif Hevel, right? The kettle isn't Mosif Hevel. It's not adding heat because you removed the coals, so it's not adding heat. It's just hot, and the contents of the kettle the hot water is hot also. So it's just basically insulating it, at least the way I understand it, right? Basically, the kettle is serving as insulation for the hot water that's inside of it, and it's keeping it warm. And since you removed the coals before Shabbos, so it's basically before Shabbos you're setting up hatmana b'davar she'eino Mosif Hevel, and therefore you'd be allowed to drink the contents, the water on Shabbos. Now antike, the Gemara is going to explain what this antike is, but this antike, let's just say for now, it's Mosif Hevel, right? It's going to increase heat, and therefore you are unable to drink right, and therefore, what does the Mishnah say? Even though you've removed the coals, and therefore it's not, you would think, well, I removed the coals, so it's not Mosif Hevel anymore. No, in this case it actually is still Mosif Hevel, even without the coals, and therefore, the way I understand it, is that you basically have hatmana, b'davar Mosif Hevel, and that isn't allowed at all, even if you would do it before Shabbos, because we're worried about like stoking coals. Therefore, we say that when it comes to hatmana, and that's what, we'll define what it is, but that's the way I understand what this thing is. It's hatmana, and it's b'davar shemosif hevel, and therefore it's not allowed even on Shabbos, so you can't drink the water. Says the Gemara, heichidami moliar. What is this moliar? So Tana, we learn in a brayso, mayim mi b'fnim u'gechalim mi b'chutz. So you have water inside this kettle, and you have coals outside of the kettle. And we're saying as long as you remove the coals before Shabbos, so the kettle is not going to be Mosif Hevel, it's just going to be preserving the heat of the water, and therefore you would be allowed to drink the water that's inside of it on Shabbos. Antike, what is this antike? So Rabba Amar Beikire. So Rabba says it's a Beikire. It's basically, think of like the kiraim, like the double stove, and it's made out of earthenware. And basically on one side of the stove you would put in water, and then on the other side of the stove, on the second side of the stove, you would like fill it up with coals, and the coals would get really hot, and it would heat up the divider that is made out of earthenware, and the divider would then, absorb a lot of heat, and that would basically heat the water next, on the other side of the stove, and also, since that divider would get super duper hot, it would also then maintain the heat, even after you take out the coals. And now we're saying that even though it's grufa or ketuma, even if you remove the coals, the things you still wouldn't be able to drink the water on Shabbos, since that divider gets so hot from the coals and retains the heat, it actually becomes mosif hevel, right? It actually becomes so hot that it is increasing heat, almost like a coal itself. It's increasing heat and providing heat to the water. Therefore, you would not be allowed to use it on Shabbos. You're not allowed to drink the water on Shabbos because it was, the way I understand it, insulated with a davar mosif hevel. Okay, fine. So that's Rabba's opinion. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Beidudei. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says it's a double-bottomed container. Meaning, so basically the way this thing works is that it's made out of iron, out of barzel, out of iron, and it's got like two compartments to it. So the bottom compartment you would put coals in it, and the top compartment you would put the water in. Okay, and we're saying here that even once you've removed the coals from the bottom compartment of this antiki, so because the iron retains heat very well, so therefore, no, it wasn't iron, it was nechoshes. It was nechoshes is copper, right? It was made out of copper, and because the copper retains the heat very well, so even once you've removed the coals, it would still be mosif hevel, would still increase heat, and therefore you would not be allowed to drink that water on Shabbos. Okay, fine. So that's machlokes between Rabba and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rabba says it's this like stove kind of thing with that earthenware divider that gets really hot. According to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, it's this double-bottomed kli that is made out of copper. So So Mando Amar Beidudei. So Mando Amar who says that this antiki is this Beidudei, i.e. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, right? This copper double-bottomed kli. So kol sheken bekirei. Certainly, you also would not be allowed to drink the water in Rabba's bekirei because that retains the heat even better than the copper. Uman da'amar bekirei aval beidudei lo. Right? But Rabba, who says that you're not allowed to drink the water in this earthenware stove-like thing, that's because that retains the heat super duper well, but you would be allowed to drink the water from Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's beidudei, this double-bottomed kli. Tana Kavasa Rav Nachman, and we actually have a brisa supporting Rav Nachman. Antiki, when it comes to this antiki, Hafal Grufa Uktuma, even though you've removed all of the, even though you've shoveled away and covered up the coals, Ein Shosen Emenu Mipneshen Nechushta Mechamemasa. So you can't drink the hot water since the copper retains the heat very well and will be providing heat to the water. So we see that since we're talking about copper in this brisa, it would sound like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak who says that it's copper. Okay, fine. It's this copper double-bottomed kli. Cool. Okay, let's move on. Hamecham shepineu. So we're gonna have to. So this. It's funny. So Rashi on this Mishnah basically just says like, look, we're going to explain this Mishnah in the Gemara. So he doesn't even really say much. So there's not much I could say about this Mishnah. We're going to explain it really through the Gemara. But hamecham shepineu, if you take a hot water urn that was on the fire, and pineu means to, clear it away. We're going to have to define what that means exactly in detail, but you clear it away. Lo yitein l'sochot zonein, don't put inside of it cold water b'shvil sheyichamu, so that they will get hot. Don't do that. Avonosinu l'socho, but you can put cold water inside of it, or l'sochakos, or into a cup kedei lafshiran, so that they will become like lukewarm. We're going to have to explain what this means. So my Kamar, what is this Mishnah saying, right? Or as Rashi kind of says, the last Rashi on the page, he kind of explains it well. My pineu, what does it mean to clear it away? Umay lo yitein, v'hadar amar aval nosein, and then we say don't put in it, and then we say do put in it. Like what is going on in this Mishnah? So Amar of Ada bar Masna, says Rav Ada bar Masna, Hachi Kamar, this is what the Mishnah is saying. Hamecham shepina mimenu mayim chamin, so this is what it means. If you have a hot water urn, okay, it's made out of metal, whatever it is, hot water urn, and also I assume that it's talking about that it's not plugged into electricity like ours are, right? It was probably getting heated up on the stove. I guess you remove it from the stove, and now you pour out all of the hot water. So what you're left with is this metal like container that is super duper hot because it just had boiling water in it. So lo yitain l'socha mayim mu'atin kidei sheyichamu. don't put in a little bit of water now into this really hot metal because the water is going to cook. And we don't want the water to cook. Or it's just going to get really hot. I guess hot enough that would be considered cooked probably. But you can put in a lot of water into this urn so that they'll become kind of lukewarm. Okay? The Gemara says, 1 second, but then, when you take metal and you heat it up really hot and then you put in cold water to it, well, it's going to make the metal stronger. So isn't that a problem? That you're going to be, it's sort of like the Gemar Melacha did I actually say that? What is it? Yeah, Gemar Melacha Satzorfen. It's the Gemar Melacha of the Tzorfen, of those people who metal workers. And I guess that's a Melacha. Maybe it's part of Bona. I don't know. Maybe it's like a Tolda or something. I don't know. But anyways, that would be a problem, right? Because you are strengthening this metal. So the Gemara says, yeah, but Reb Shimoni, this Mishnah is like Reb Shimon, the Amr, Davar Shem Miskaven Mutter. That's something that is not intended. Malacha that you didn't intend to do is mutar. Now, I don't know why this would be considered a davar she'einu miskaven. Generally, davar she'einu miskaven is something that may or may not happen, and if it happened, then oops, it's okay. Right? Meaning, the classic example is dragging a bench on the ground on Shabbos. So, as long as you don't intend to make a furrow, so if you did end up making a furrow, it's okay, because in that case, you're not necessarily going to make a furrow. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. So in the event that you did, whatever, you didn't intend to, so it's okay. I guess it implies that in this case, maybe it'll strengthen the metal, maybe it won't. Because if it's certainly going to strengthen the metal, then I don't understand why it would be davar she'einu miskaven. It would be more like, I don't know, just doing a malacha. Anyways. But I don't know, I guess it might not necessarily happen. Fine, okay, great. So as long as you didn't intend to strengthen the metal, it would be okay. Alright, that is Rav Ada bar Masna's take on the Mishnah. Now, Maskif la Abaye asks a kasha on Rav Ada bar Masna. Midi mecham shepina mimenu mayim katani? Doesn't say in the Mishnah a hot water urn or kettle that you poured the water out of it. It doesn't say that you moved the water out of it. No, rather mecham shepineu katani. It says a hot water kettle that you removed it. Meaning, Ela Amar Abaye, rather Abaye explains, Hachi Kamar, this is what the Mishnah is saying. Hamecham, this hot water kettle, shepineu, that you removed it from the fire, and you still have all of the water still in it. So v'yesh bo mayim chamin, and there's hot water still in the kettle. Lo yiten l'socho mayim mu'atim b'shvil sheyichomu. Don't add just a little bit of hot water, a little bit of cold water to the hot water that's already there, so that this water will get hot, because that'll be cooking the water on Shabbos. That's a problem. But you can add a lot of water into there, kidei la'afshiran, so that you'll have it'll balance each other out, and you'll have some lukewarm water. However, says Abaye, if you are going to pour out all of the hot water from this kettle, and now you're just going to have really hot metal, well then you shouldn't be pouring water into this empty, really hot metal vessel, because then you're going to be strengthening the metal. Rabbi Yehuda, Damar davar she'einu miskaven aser, and this, and this is like Rabbi Yehuda that says even if you didn't intend to do a malacha, right, davar she'einu miskaven is going to be aser, and therefore by pouring this water into this hot kli, it will be forbidden, because you're going to be strengthening it. Okay? Fine. Amar Rav, said Rav, Lo shanu ela lahafshir, aval etzarif aser. So says Rav, what's permitted? It's only permitted if there's still some hot water in this kli, in this urn, and then you add more water to it to just get lukewarm water. That would be okay. Aval etzarif, but if you pour all the water out, and then you add water to that, and it's going to strengthen the metal, well then that will be aser. Ushmuel amar afilu l'tzarif nami mutter, and Shmuel says no, even to add enough water that is going, add water to an empty urn that's really hot and it's going to strengthen the metal, that's also okay. That's also permitted. So the Gemara says, 1 second, l'tzarif l'chatchila mishari. But really, is it permitted to just milechatchila pour water into this hot urn and it'll strengthen the metal? So ela yitmar hach yitmar. Rather, if you want to state it like this: Amar Rav lo shanu ela shiur lahafshir. So rather, Rav says no. So meaning, whereas the first way that we explained Rav, it was talking about where there was hot water in there already and then you added some water to the hot water. In this reading, we're saying, no, according to Rav and according to Shmuel, we're talking about an empty urn that's really hot. There's no water in it, but it's very hot. And says Rav, Lo shanu ela shir lahav shir, that what's permitted is to pour in enough water that the water will just become warm. Okay, so maybe you fill it up halfway or something, and then this water is going to get warmed by, so it's enough that if it was just a little tiny bit of water, then it would get cooked. So you're pouring in enough water that it would just get warmed, but at the same time, aval shir l'tzarif aser. At the same time, if you would fill it up with water, that by filling it up with water, it would actually strengthen the metal. Well, in that case, then it would be forbidden. And maybe that's also why, by the way, it's a davar she'eino miskaven, maybe. Because maybe, clearly, it won't automatically strengthen the metal, right? Already it sounds like, it depends how much you put in, right? And you have to do it right in order to strengthen the metal. And therefore, maybe, if you pour it in, it's like, oh, whoops, it actually strengthened the metal, then maybe that's why it's davar she'eino miskaven. But anyways, Rav says it would only be permitted if you fill up enough water that it will make them lukewarm. But if you fill it up the whole way, which will actually strengthen the metal, then it's not allowed. Shmuel amar afilu shir l'tzarif mutter. And Shmuel says, no, even if you fill it up the whole way and it's going to strengthen the metal, that would still be permitted. But one second, the memra de Shmuel krab Shimon svirle. But that would mean, right? This is davar she'eino miskaven, and we're saying that it's mutter. Shmuel is saying that it's mutter, that you'd be allowed to fill it up the whole way. Because if it's a davar she'eino miskaven, it's mutter. It sounds like he holds like Reb Shimon. However, the Amar Shmuel, but didn't Shmuel say? And now the interesting thing is that this example isn't going to be by davar she'eino miskaven. This example is going to be by melacha she'eino tzricha legufa. And we're seeing that in that case, in this case we're about to bring, which is melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara wants to say, meaning if in the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon regarding melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, so then the Gemara wants to assume that also by davar she'eino miskaven he would hold like Rabbi Yehuda and say that it's us, or not like Rabbi Shimon and say that it's mutter. So basically, if Shmuel over here is saying that you could fill up this hot water urn even if it's going to strengthen the metal, he's saying it's mutter, which means that he must hold like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar she'eino miskaven. But the Amar Shmuel, but didn't Shmuel say mechaben gacheles shamateches b'rishus harabim b'shvil shelo yizoku barabim, that if there is some red hot metal in the middle of rishus harabim, okay, now red hot metal to cool it down is not asur midoraisa. It's not mechabe, right? Putting out a coal is mechabe. Putting out a fire is mechabe. A red hot piece of metal that you want to cool down is not mechabe, but midirabanan they say it's not allowed. And we're saying, however, that if it's in the middle of Rishus Harabim and people can get hurt, well then you would be allowed to what? You'd be allowed to cool it down because they're not gonna make their din dirabanan in a place where there could be damage to the rabbin. Okay, fine. However, if the coal was made out of wood, if it was a coal of wood and it was in the middle of Rishus Harabim, you would not be allowed to cool it down. Right? Because that would be an Isur D'Oraisa, that would be Mechabe. And V'isa Gadaitech Sarva L'Kreb Shimon, Afilu Shaleitz Nami. And if in fact Shmuel was a Reb Shimon guy, well, when it comes to melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, Reb Shimon says that he would be potter, right? And this is a melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, right? As we learned already, when it came to in Bameh Madlikin, right, blowing out a candle, we said that when it comes to mechabe, it's melacha she'eino tzricha legufa, unless you are extinguishing in order to create a coal, right, to make a pecham, to make a coal, or maybe you're extinguishing it because, what was the other reason? Because you were just singeing it so that it will light better later, right? Then you're interested in actually extinguishing the flame. But in this case, I'm not interested in extinguishing the coal. I don't want to extinguish the coal. I'm not interested oh really, I would love to extinguish a coal right now. No, I'm extinguishing a coal for some other reason. I don't want people to get damaged. Right? So therefore it's a melacha she'eino tzricha legufa. I don't want people to get hurt. Therefore I'm extinguishing this coal. So it's a melacha she'eino tzricha legufa. And so if Shmuel is a Reb Shimon guy, So melacha she'eina tzricha legufa is pater, even though it's pater of alasar, but certainly in a place where it would cause damage, people can get hurt, well then it would be permitted to put out this coal, right? So if he right, so again, so we see, so Shmuel is saying that you would not be allowed to put out this coal, even if people can get hurt, which sounds like he's therefore holding like Rabbi Yehuda that melacha she'eina tzricha legufa is aser, chayav, right? So the Gemara answers, b'davar she'ein miskavin savar like Reb Shimon melacha she'eina tzricha legufa savar like Reb Yehuda. So when it comes to davar she'ein miskavin, he holds like Reb Shimon and says that it's mutter, and that's why he says that you'd be allowed to fill up this hot water urn that's really hot. You'd be allowed to fill it up with water, even though it's going to strengthen. It might strengthen the metal because it's melacha. It's davar she'eina miskavin, and he holds like Reb Shimon that it's mutter. However, when it comes to melacha she'eina tzricha legufa, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that you'd be chayav, and that is why you would not be allowed to extinguish the coal, even if it's in rishus harabim, because it's in Isur D'Oraisa. Amar Ravina, said Ravina, Hilkach. Therefore, since Shmuel is saying that, when it comes to dinim d'Rabbanan, or since the assumption anyways, is that when it comes to dinim d'Rabbanan, right, says Rashi in the Dibra Maskil Hilkach, right, Kevin to Amad lo gazu shvus d'chibui mateches b'makom nizka d'Rabim, since we said that the Isur d'Rabbanan of, cooling down this red hot metal would not apply in a place where the public can get damaged by this red hot metal. So we see that these, Isurim D'Rabbanan, these Gzeros D'Rabbanan are not, they didn't make them in the context of Nizka D'Rabbanan, where people can get hurt in public. So therefore, Kotes B'Rishus Harabim, what if you have a thorn in the middle of Rishus Harabim? People could step on it and get hurt. So Malicho Pachos Midalad Amos, you're allowed to move it in increments that are less than Dalad Amos. Right? That I guess that certainly you wouldn't be able to move it Dalet Amos because that would be an Isur D'Oraisa, but it sounds like, apparently even Midirabbanan, you wouldn't be allowed to move it in increments that are less than Dalet Amos. Right? However, they would waive this Isur since, somebody can get hurt if they step on this thorn. And if it's in a carmelis, then you can move it even more than 4 amos, since the whole Indian of carrying in a carmelis is only midrabanan anyway, so then you would be allowed to simply move this away to prevent people from getting hurt by it. Alright, sweet. That was Daf Mem Aleph Masechta Shabbos. So let's do a recap of what we learned. So we started off talking about just like proper modesty practices when bathing in the river, if you're allowed to cover up your private parts or not. Basically, when you're going into the river, it sounds like you probably should not be covering your private parts, since nobody could see you anyways, so we don't want it to make it seem like you're embarrassed by your bris milah. Yet when you're coming out of the river from bathing, then you would be allowed to cover yourself for modesty reasons. Drinking from hot water kettles, that was kind of interesting, at least the way I was understanding it, unless, I'd love to hear if somebody has an alternative understanding of this Mishnah or another insight. By the way, Adam Friedman, can you if you have photos of these moliars and antiques and these different urns, maybe share it with us? That would be awesome. Cool. Anyways, so when drinking from these hot water kettles on Shabbos, so this moliar was like this kettle that you would put the coals on the outside of it. And we say as long as you remove the coals before Shabbos, it would be permitted to drink the water because it's not mosif hevel. It's not increasing heat. Okay. This antiki is not allowed because the heat, it's mosif hevel. It increases heat. And we had 2 opinions on what this antiki is. Rabbah said it's some kind of like a stove kind of thing with 2 compartments, and you put water in one compartment and hot coals in the other compartment, and it gets the earthenware divider really, really hot. So it's mosif hevel. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said it's basically this 2-tiered kettle that you would put hot, and was made out of copper, and you would put hot coals in the bottom and water on the top, and even after you remove the coals, it would still be mosif hevel. And we brought a proof to say that it seems that Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, his definition would be more accurate. Next, we talked about can you basically put water to a hot urn on Shabbos. Now, the question was what exactly this is talking about. So, Rabba Bar Masna said that it's talking about an urn that you emptied out all of the hot water from it, and he's saying that you can't put a little bit of water in there because then it'll get really hot and it'll basically cook it, I guess. But if you put a lot of water into it, then it would be permitted because it's just going to make the water lukewarm. What about the fact that you're going to strengthen the metal of the urn? It's okay because he's holding like Reb Shimon, who says that davar she'eino miskavin is mutter. Abaye says, wait a second, it doesn't say in the Mishnah that you remove the water from the urn. It just says that you remove the urn. Therefore, Abaye says that the hot water is still in there, right? And you just remove the urn from the fire. And what it's saying is that if you add a little bit of water to this hot water that's already in there, well, then this water is going to cook, and that's not okay. But if you add a lot of water to make it kind of lukewarm, so then it would be acceptable. Now, if it was empty, if the urn was empty and just really hot, then you would not be allowed to add water because it would strengthen the metal, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that davar she'eino miskavin is asur. Okay? Rav said that if you empty out the kettle and then you add enough water that it'll make it lukewarm, right? So then it would be permitted. If you add enough water that it's going to strengthen the metal, then it would not be allowed. Shmuel says that you can even add enough water that will strengthen the metal, because he holds like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar she'eino miskavin, that it would be mutar. We then asked the question from Melacha She'ein Tzricha Legufo, where Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and we said because Tachlis Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to davar she'eino, when it comes to Melacha She'ein Tzricha Legufa, to say that you'd be chayiv, yet he holds like Reb Shimon when it comes to davar she'eino miskavin, that would be mutar. Great. I hope everybody enjoyed. I hope you have a really good day or night or whatever. Peace.